Brick Ride and regales Rochester with Ripping Reed's headquarters. This better be good. Yeah? Yeah? No! Okay, people, we are T-minus 10 minutes to Rick's arrival. I want to see hustle. Miriam, where are we on the dump?
2,000 tons on the rooftop waiting to be released, sir.
Perfect. Remind Steve is cute. Not until after the hot air balloon. We don't want a repeat of the James Patterson debacle. James, where's my sword? We can't have a Percy Jackson tableau vivant without Riptide.
We have a few options.
I'm gonna go with that one. The penny's mightier and all that. Besides, we don't want another lawsuit on our hands after the Stephanie Myers incident. Adrian, there you are. Where are we on Rick's list of demands?
Well, the thing is...
Miniature therapy horse, check. 127 head Skittles, check. Check. Yeah, I know, he's almost here.
No,
Remember the Alamo, check.
Rick.
Yeah, Rick's coming. Cardboard cutout Benedict Cumberbatch, check. All right, here we go. You ready? I'm ready. Woo. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce to you Rick might be a little delayed. In fact, we might need to convince Rick to come to Rochester. Rick, buddy, pal. We had a slight miscommunication, but we're here and we're ready when you are.
We want Rick! We want Rick! We want Rick!
We want you to put this on social media. We want everybody to know you were here and they weren't. Okay? Woo! So we've had a blast for the last 8 days. We started in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress. We have zigzagged all over this country, and we saved the best for last. I wanted you guys to actually make the most of being here. I know a lot of you, we met a family that came from Ottawa. We actually had somebody come from Chile to one of our events. Really, the country of Chile, no kidding. We even had the president of the Percy Jackson fan club of Peru come a couple years ago. So, all right, guys, so before we get started, you guys can sit back down. Okay. We're gonna get going. Hey, Alex. What's going on?
Nothing.
What you got there?
Anybody ever tell you you're too nosy?
You, every day of my life. Let me see. Beautiful. Can you see up there in the balcony?
No.
Flashy. Okay. Well, you'll get your chance. That's pretty awesome. How'd you learn to do that?
No, ceramics class. But You could do it too if you took that Pottery 101 class at the hotel like I told you to.
No way. Ceramics to the death for beginners. Who wants that?
It's easy. All you need are the right tools.
No, thank you. I've seen what you can do with that clay cutter.
So speaking of class, have you memorized the 9 worlds yet? Because I don't want to travel the 9 worlds with a duke.
Of course. I think.
Okay, I'm going to quiz you. Don't look at that chart. All right. So
All right.
I'll give you some easy ones first.
Quiz, right? All right.
You gotta know
Let me
what.
think with all this hair.
You gotta know what Midgard is.
Midgard. Not looking. I see a bunch of little smarty britches out here in the audience. A lot of them wearing orange Camp Half-Blood shirts.
What's
They
that?
might. Anybody out there know what Midgard is? I see a hand right there. You're being super polite. Shout it out. You know what Midgard is? Got it? All right, there's a good one. Where the mortals are. Where you guys are. Where you live life every day. It's also the land of Balafon. My favorite.
All right.
Bring it.
So, Valhalla, that's pretty obvious.
That's easy. That's where you and I live every day and die every day over and over and over again. Who knows how many times I've died so far? Back there in the back, shout it out. Do you know? Too many answers. Too many times to... That was a trick question. Too many times to answer. Okay.
All right.
Hit me with the next one.
Helheim.
Helheim, that's easy. That's where hell is. This one knew right away, didn't you? Good job.
Alpine.
Alpine. That's a pretty ratty place, isn't it? That's where the land of the elves. That's where poor Hearthstone grew up, and it's like, oh gosh, and that horrible father. I hope we never see him again.
All right, you ready for the really hard ones?
All right.
Niflheim.
Niflheim. Sense memory. Anybody out there know Niflheim? Shout it out. Oh, now you're all scared and chicken. But the land of the frost giants. There's some ice. That's a good one. Okay.
Okay, ready? Muspelheim.
Muspelheim.
Land of the Muspels.
Oh, Frank, I gotta go. I gotta meet Annabeth down at the wharf. She wants me to meet her boyfriend, some guy who's gonna teach me how to fight monsters underwater.
Easy.
Easy. Okay. Easy peasy. I'm coming out here. You already want to answer the question. You don't know what it is yet. No! Get out here. Talking over. Tell me what your name is. Giovanna. Everybody give Giovanna a hand. The question is, what color is Percy Jackson's favorite color?
Okay. What is the name of Magnus's Valkyrie friend? And I want the whole name.
The whole name
Yes,
of
sir.
Magnus's
Yeah.
Valkyrie friend. Stand up and tell us your name. You gotta talk into Alex's
All
microphone.
right. Okay, do you know? Yes, Samira Alaba.
Did everybody hear that? Magnus's Valkyrie friend is Samira Alaba. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna get a little bit harder. We're coming back here. Buddy, you in the blue, I want to talk to you. Come on in. That way's probably easier. Let's go on this side. Okay, this is, now I told you they were getting harder. Come on in. Tell me your name. Alright guys, so you get a taste of where we've been in this series. Let's take a look and see where we're going.
Norse law has remained unchanged for 10,000 years. And yet you seek to change it today over my dead body!
Norse law states that every Viking must eat the food of the gods.
Falafel is no food of the gods!
It's pronounced falafel. Falafel is not even meat. Have you never tried one? It's delicious.
The tahini sauce, it literally melts in your mouth.
I only trust what I can kill.
You don't need to kill the falafel. It's vegan.
Magnus Chase, son of Frey, eats falafel every day. We know this because we are told. Shiny bones. Who here dares defy the words of Magnus Chase?
Falafel is cool. I ate some last night.
Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, Book 3, The Ship of the Dead, from Riordan.
This is delicious. Bandits gluten-free. What are you going to do?
We want to know who's your favorite uncle. Shout it out. Here he is, the storyteller of the gods, Mr. Rick Riordan.
Fantastic to be here. I see a lot of orange t-shirts. We got some demigods in the audience, I see. Excellent. Well, as they were telling you, it has been quite a tour. We have been all over the country. We went to 8 different places, and I'm really glad that we got to visit you as the final, the best, the last, especially because I know and I know that Rochester has brought a lot of beautiful things into the world. You have Kodak, you have the U of R, but my personal favorite is my wife, Becky, who was born and raised right here. She has very fond memories. She grew up on Monroe Avenue. She remembers Abbott's custard and White's White Hots and going to Wegmans and all that fun stuff. So she says hello. Well, I was backstage thinking that it has now been 40 years since I knew I wanted to be a writer. I am 53 now, which in itself is kind of scary to me. When I was 13, when I was in 8th grade, I had this really good English teacher. And I wrote a story for her class, the first short story I'd ever written. It was about a guy who dies and goes to the afterlife. I showed it to her, she really liked it. She said, "Rick, let's try to get this published." And I was like, "How do you do that?" Now back then, we didn't have Wattpad, we didn't have fan fiction, we didn't have the internet. If you wanted to get published, you had to send a story off and hope that a magazine or a book publisher liked it. So I did that. I waited about 6 weeks, and finally I got something back in the mail. I was so excited, I thought I'd be rich and famous. I ripped it open and it was my first rejection note. Yes. Thank you for the rejection note. Oh, but don't worry, there were many more to come. I got a big stack of them over the years, all kinds of rejections. It wasn't until I was 30 years old that I finally got published, after all those years of trying. And even then, it wasn't for the children's books that you probably know me for. At the time, I was teaching middle school. I taught for a long time, 6th, 7th, 8th grade English, social studies, taught for 15 years. And while I was teaching, I started writing adult mystery novels. Now, why did I want to contemplate murder while teaching middle school? I don't know. But my students would always ask me, Mr. Riordan, can we read your books? And I would say, no. They're not appropriate, there's bad language, there's violence, and they would always go, really? And go immediately out and buy them, and the book sales went up. It was great. But they said, why don't you write something for kids? You teach kids, you write books, why aren't you putting the things together? They were right, but at the time I really didn't know how to go about doing that. It wasn't until my own son was in 2nd grade, and he was having a rough year in school. He is ADHD. He is dyslexic, and he really did not like reading. So I was just looking for anything to keep him interested in school. The only unit he liked that year was Greek mythology. I had taught Greek mythology many times in my own classroom, so I started telling him bedtime stories based on Greek mythology. And when I ran out, he said, Dad, tell me another one. And I was like, there aren't any more. Sorry, there haven't been any new ones in 2,000 years. But he said, well, just make one up. So I did. I made up a story about a kid like him who's struggling with dyslexia and ADHD and finds out that that's really a sign that you might be a demigod. And my son said, yeah. And that became the story of Percy Jackson. Now, that got published. And the next thing you know, I'm no longer a teacher, I am a children's writer. I wrote 5 of the Percy Jackson books, and then 3 of the Kane Chronicles about Egyptian mythology, and then the heroes of Olympus back to Greece and Rome, and then today, what I really like though, is that after all of those years, writing that first story about a guy who dies and goes to the afterlife, I'm here today to talk to you about my new book, about a guy who dies and goes to the afterlife. The Magnus Chase series, I've had this idea for a long time. I always loved the concept of Viking Valhalla, the afterlife for Vikings, paradise. And what was paradise for a Viking? It meant you would go to Valhalla and you would get to feast and eat and drink and kill each other all day. You could go around cutting each other's heads off, and it didn't matter, because you would just be resurrected in time for dinner. And so, Magnus Chase, this kid from Boston, accidentally dies a heroic death with a sword in his hand, like a good old-fashioned Viking. Next thing he knows, he is one of the Einherjar, which is Norse for the lone warriors, Odin's special resurrected warriors. And he goes on all these adventures with his friends who also live in the Hotel Valhalla. Well, if you have read any of the series, you know that the main enemy, as it is in Norse mythology, is Loki. Now, Loki in the myths is a little more complicated than the Thor movies. Don't get me wrong, I love the Thor movies. I think they're very fascinating and fun, and I like them a lot. But Loki in the myths is a little different. He's sometimes the good guy, he's sometimes the bad guy. In the actual myths, he is not Thor's brother, he's Odin's brother. And he gets them in a lot of trouble. Until one day he goes too far and he actually kills a god. He kills the god Balder, the god of light. And the other Norse gods finally say, okay, that's it, you've gone too far, we're going to punish you forever. When the Norse gods punish you, they don't mess around. They take Loki and they strap him down spread eagle in a cavern floor at the bottom of a mountain. And it's not enough to use chains. No, they take Loki's 2 favorite sons. They turn them into wolves, and force them to fight each other to the death. And then when that is done, they take the wolves' entrails. I hope you didn't have dinner yet. And they turn the entrails into magical chains. And they tie Loki down with the chains made from the intestines of his own sons. And even that's not gross enough. They take a stone pillar and put it by Loki's head, wrap a giant serpent around it, and for all eternity, the serpent's mouth is open over Loki's face, dripping venom into his eyes. His only comfort is his godly wife, Sigyn, who stays at his side with a bowl held over his face to catch the venom. But every once in a while, Sigyn has to turn and empty the bowl. And when that happens, the venom falls in Loki's eyes, and he thrashes, and the entire mountain shakes. And the Norse believe that's where we get earthquakes from. It's Loki down there. Well, in the second book of Magnus Chase, you may know Loki has escaped his bonds, and he is not happy. He decides it would be a great idea to start Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, when all the 9 worlds burn, everyone dies, and it's basically a really happy time. One of the first things that happens in Ragnarok is that Loki goes and gets his battleship. Imagine a Viking longship the size of an aircraft carrier, filled with 100,000 zombie warriors. Loki is going to sail this thing into battle, park it right next to Asgard where the gods live, and kill everybody. The ship itself is called Naglfar, the ship of nails, or the ship of the dead. And when I say nails, I'm not talking about the nails that you hammer in the wood. No, no. I'm talking about the fingernails and toenails of dead people. The Norse believed that when you died, you had to be very careful to be sure that somebody cut your nails and burned the clippings. Because if you did not, those clippings would go down into the underworld and be used to help form the ship of the dead. And that would make doomsday come that much faster. So imagine that ship made entirely of toenails and fingernails of dead people. Don't you want to book a cruise right now? Well, that's Magnus's job. Find Loki, put him back into chains, and keep him from sailing the ship of the dead and starting Ragnarok. But no pressure. Also, during the book, you're going to find out about some of the characters that you may know from the first 2. For instance, Hearthstone the elf. Hearthstone is pretty cool. He is deaf, so he communicates in ASL, which is, of course, Alpine Sign Language. Same, fortunately, as American Sign Language, but that's no problem. His friends just learn a little sign language and they get along famously. He's also a great rune magician. He has all these rune stones, and every time he casts a different Viking letter, different magic happens. Ice storms, firestorms. He can summon an 8-legged horse that they can ride. All kinds of cool stuff. In this book, you'll find out a little bit more about Hearthstone's past, and unfortunately, he's going to have to go back to Alfheim, his homeland, one more time. And if you read the last book, yeah, that's not such a happy place. You'll also find out about Thomas Jefferson Jr., TJ. TJ is one of the Einherjar. He died heroically in battle, but he died in 1863. He was a member of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, one of the first volunteer African-American regiments to fight for the Union in the Civil War. He is the son of Tyr, the god of bravery and dueling. And one thing you'll find out about TJ in this book is that if you are a child of Tyr, because your dad is the god of dueling, you can never turn down a challenge. Somebody comes up to you and says, "I challenge you to the death with toothpicks." You have to say, "I accept." That's going to get him in a little bit of trouble in this book. Not the toothpick thing, but the dueling thing. You'll also hear more about Mallory Keane, another one of the Florentine Einherjar. Mallory is from Ireland. She died heroically in the 1970s, trying to disarm a car bomb during the Troubles in Ireland. And you'll find out a little bit about how that happened, and also who her godly parent is, something you have never known before. Also, we have half-born Gunderson. He's a Viking of the old school, half Draftborn is a berserker who died in the Middle Ages. You're not familiar with berserkers. They were sort of the special forces of the Viking world. They would get into this trance before battle, and they would charge into battle wearing pretty much nothing except their loincloth and maybe some battle paint, and they'd get their axe. You would just sort of have to make sure you pointed them in the right direction. And they would charge into battle naked, and they would basically kill until there was nobody left to kill or until they were killed themselves. Yeah, really fun guys to have at a party, yeah. So if you have ever been told that you're going berserk, that's where the word comes from. And you will also hear from the character, Alex Fierro. Alex, I have to say, has quite a fan club among the readership. She was a really challenging character to write. The genesis of the character was like this. Loki, the god in Norse mythology, is canonically gender fluid. And what I mean by that is in the mythology itself, they believe that Loki would change from male to female, back and forth, with no problem at all. He didn't really care. Male one day, female the other day, whatever. And there's one story I really love about that, where there's this giant who's building the walls of Asgard, but if he finishes by a certain deadline, the price that he wants is like phenomenal. He wants the sun and the moon and the hand of the goddess of love for his wife. So he looks like he's about to finish it. And the gods look at Loki and say, you've got to get us out of this. Do something. Loki says, okay, I'll distract him so he can't finish the job. Well, so happens the giant has a stallion that's helping him. It's bringing the blocks and putting them on the wall. So Loki turns into a beautiful mare. And he trots up to the stallion and winks at the stallion. The stallion's like, hello, baby. And off they go. The giant runs after them, and sure enough, the giant's distracted. He can't finish by the deadline, and the gods give a wall for free. 9 months later, however, Loki comes back, and he's got a baby. And the baby is an 8-legged horse that becomes Sleipnir, Odin's steed. How does a god have a baby who's a horse? I don't know. But in mythology, Loki was both a father and a mother. So I was thinking, okay, that's interesting. It would kind of make sense if one of Loki's children in the series was also gender fluid or transgender. And Alex Fierro is both. Now, I have taught, like I said, for 15 years. I taught private school, I taught public school, I taught in Texas, I taught in California. Over those years, I've taught just about every kind of kid you can imagine. Every religion, every ethnicity, every economic group, and yeah, every gender and sexuality. And so I kind of figured when I started writing these books, it was important for me that all of my former students knew that I remembered them and that their experience was important to me. I wanted any kind of kid to be able to look at the books and say, hey, that's me. And for me to be able to say, you know, you matter too. You also can be a hero. So that's really why Alex is in the book, and I didn't plan it any more than that, but it actually won an award from the American Library Association, the Stonewall Award, which is for LGBT characters. Certainly not something I was expecting or knew much about. I'm just an old straight white guy, but I'm glad the character worked for them. So that's Magnus Chase. What else is going on? A lot of times I'll hear from you guys on social media or wherever, and you will say, Rick, why don't you write a book about fill-in-the-blank mythology? Chinese mythology, Indian mythology, Native American mythology, Brazilian mythology. There's so many cool world mythologies. And I agree that it would be neat to write these too. But I don't tell the authors what to write. They're not ghostwriting for me. It's their own stuff. But it's stuff with mythology, with humor, with action, with great characters. And the first one is coming out in March. It's called Arush Shah and the End of Time. It's by Rosh Chakshi, who is an Indian-American writer and who knows Hindu mythology like I never could. And you think Greek mythology is crazy? Whoa, wait until you see the Hindu gods. There's like millions of them. It's nuts in the very best possible way. I've heard this book described, this is my favorite description, Percy Jackson meets Sailor Moon. Yeah, think about that for a second. So that's coming out in March. And then in the fall, we're going to have 2 more. We don't have covers for them yet, but fall 2018, The Storm Runner by Jennifer Cervantes is coming out. This is Mayan mythology set in New Mexico. Really fascinating. The Mayans, man. Again, some bloody, crazy stuff. Also in the fall, a Korean mythology book by Riordan. Hey, here's Korea! Yeah! All right. That's called The Dragon Pearl. And I like to describe this one as fox spirits in space. Because it's got some really nice science fiction elements, too. So we're hoping to do 4 books like this a year from different authors, so stay tuned. I hope you guys like it. Lester will also be back in terms of my books. Yeah, and if you haven't started the Trials of Apollo series, that's the 3rd book, The Burning Nails. And again, if you haven't started the series, basically the premise is Apollo is in trouble. His dad Zeus grounds him by turning him into a human. He hurtles down to Manhattan and lands in a dumpster as a normal 16-year-old kid with no powers at all. And he's got to figure out how to get back to Mount Olympus and become a god again. In this series, this is a 5-book series, you will see pretty much everyone from Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus at some point or another. In this particular book, let's see, you will spend some time again with Piper McLean. You will see Jason Grace. And especially someone that you guys have been asking about for a long time, Grover Underwood. So that's what I'm working on right now, and it will be out in May. Hope you guys like. Well, Leo actually, if you haven't read the 2nd book, Leo Valdez is in the Dark Prophecy, the 2nd Apollo book, all over the place. So he and Calypso are actually in that book, so check it out. The Kane Chronicles. Now I wish I could tell you that I have an entire new novel in the Kane series. I haven't had time to do that yet. I would love to, but in the meantime, if you want to do a little splash back into the Kane Chronicles world, we're putting out the Brooklyn House Magician's Manual. This is a companion book, more like the Camp Half-Blood Confidential book, where you get looks at Egyptian magic and the Egyptian gods, what it's like to be with the Kanes at Brooklyn House. That's coming May 1st, and if you haven't read the Kane Chronicles yet, and you're interested in checking them out, this is a good time to do it because they're coming out in April with brand new covers, so they'll all be in bookstores all over again. And so, you can check those out if you wish. What else is coming up? How about coloring books? The first time that Disney came to me and said, hey, we want to do a Percy Jackson coloring book, I was like, what? But then they actually made it, and I got to see the art, and I understood. It's really pretty great. It came out in August. Yeah, you got one right there. There you go. It tells the entire story of the Lightning Thief in coloring. And so you can color Percy yellow or pink or whatever you want. And it really is a cool book. And they like that so much that we're doing another one based on Magnus Chase, and that'll come out in time for Percy's birthday this coming summer. And I'm really excited about this. This is right around the corner. Many of you have also asked me about this. We are going to be revamping the website, readriordan.com, to make it the true home for demigods online. What does that mean? When the whole thing is up, you will have a database of all the characters with all the information and all the portraits of them so you can look them up, cross-reference them. You will also get to find out about your own self as a demigod. You always knew that you were a demigod. Now you will find out who is your godly parent. What is your magic weapon? What plant would Apollo turn you into if he was mad at you? All of these questions. You will also find interactive maps where you can get in there and see all the different locations where our demigods go and what adventures they have there. And, of course, lots of social media tie-ins with all kinds of new art. In fact, a lot of this is up already. Read Riordan on Instagram, Read Riordan on Twitter, and the website will have all of that, and you can check it out. They've already done some amazing things, and more to come. The website will be, it's up now, but all of this stuff will start coming on October 17th. That's right around the corner, so you guys will know about it first. Check it out. So, what's happening in Percy Jackson's world? It probably won't surprise you to learn it's all very weird. For instance, this happened in Percy's world. The Lightning Thief musical, again, they came to me and said, we want to make The Lightning Thief into a musical. And I'm like, what? I couldn't get over the idea of Percy dancing and singing, "Glow, glow, glow." But, and I have to be honest with you guys, I get very weirded out when people adapt my stuff. Like many of you probably know, I never saw the movies. I could not do it. I couldn't go there. Also, even the audiobooks. I'm not saying the audiobooks aren't good, but I just get freaked out hearing somebody else's voice telling my story. I'll listen to 2 lines and I'm like, and the musical was the same way. I never saw it. I just couldn't get over the idea of having it adapted that way. But that doesn't mean it's not good. Every fan of the books, and I met Dylan today who told me this, every fan of the books who's actually seen it says it's awesome. It's faithful to the story. It's funny. It's exciting. The characters are good. The music is good. So for those of us who don't live close to Broadway, aren't fortunate enough to have that down the street from us, they are talking about doing a touring version of the show. I don't know the details, but fingers crossed. And if you want to hear Percy Jackson sing, and you want to hear the soundtrack, it's actually on iTunes, so you can check it out. That's that. Also coming in Percy's world, this is coming August 14th, the illustrated edition of The Lightning. Cover. We're putting that in time for Percy's birthday once again. You have to imagine the entire novel. Everything is there, the whole text of the novel, but with every page, full-color illustrations, done by John Rocco, who did the covers for all the books. It's amazing. And you guys are among the first to get a sneak peek. Here's a look at some of the art. I captioned this picture, I told you not to park there. The cabins at Camp Half-Blood. And the underworld. Imagine 200, 300 pages like that, full color. So that's a lot. That's the latest for me, what's going on in my world. Now, my favorite part of this is always hearing your questions. And you always have great questions, you guys. When you came in, many of you filled these out. I have not seen these yet, but my faithful helpers, Magnus and Alex, who, by the way, are actually Seal and Stephanie, my publicist and my editor at Disney, they have selected what they think are the best of the questions. So, let's see what you guys got. Okay, question 1. How old were you when you wrote your first book, and what was it called? Well, I talked a little bit about that first murder mystery that was published when I was 30. The name of it was Big Red Tequila. Can you see why I wouldn't let my kids read it? Casey would like to know, who would your godly parent be if you were a demigod? I would like it to be Athena. With my luck, it would probably be like Dionysus. My magic power is I can summon Diet Coke. Sophia says, dear Riordan, why did you make Percy go missing while he was dating Annabeth? Annabeth has the same question. Well, because it built dramatic tension, of course. And I just like to torture my characters. Oh, you knew that, okay. All right, next question. Are there any deaths in any of your books that you regret? Ooh, interesting. If so, who would you bring back from the underworld? Well, now here's the thing about deaths. If no one good ever died in any of the books, there would be, like, no stakes to anything, and the tension simply wouldn't be there. And even though the deaths hurt, that's the stuff that really makes it matter to us, that makes the story real, and makes the story more intense, deeper. So the deaths, even though, you know, yeah, you don't like to see good characters die, sometimes it just has to happen for the story to be a good story. In terms of bringing people back, though, I don't know. I think Luke Castellan probably got a... I think of all the characters, he really would have deserved a second chance, for sure. Okay. Adam would like to know, did you know you'd make a second Percy Jackson series when you were writing the first? Or did you write it based on the success of the first series? You're talking about the Heroes of Olympus series, which was the second one. Well, as you can probably tell, if you've read The Last Olympian, the last book of Percy Jackson, I set all the stuff up, right, with the prophecy and everything, for the Heroes of Olympus. So by then, yes, I knew I was going to do that. When I first started The Lightning Thief, no, I had no idea. I didn't even know that was a book. Like I said, I thought it was just a bedtime story for my kid. So I had no idea. My thinking at first was 5 books of Percy Jackson. Yeah, that's enough to cover everything in Greek mythology. By the time I was to the 4th book, I quickly realized, yeah, that was not right. And here I am, I'm writing the 13th book, set in Percy Jackson's world, the Burning Maze. I'm still not done. Do you have a personal preference for Camp Half-Blood, the Greek camp, or Camp Jupiter, the Roman camp? As you have chosen Greek to speak, is that a coincidence? Ah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the Romans are really cool, but they're way too disciplinarian for me. I couldn't survive there. I couldn't be a legionnaire. I'd rather be at Camp Half-Blood just chilling and eating strawberries. Okay. How do you research a book? I.e., where do you get all the facts? The beautiful thing about mythology is there aren't any facts. There's just different versions of stories. So, like, did Zeus throw Hephaestus down the mountain? Or did Hera throw Hephaestus down the mountain? It just depends on what version you read. There's versions of the myths from thousands of years ago that say both things. But how do I choose? I just go back and I read the original myths. I don't read ancient Greek, unfortunately. I'm not very good at Latin, but I do read translations of all the old writers. And there's, thankfully for us, thousands and thousands of pages from Greece and Rome left over about the myths. Why did you choose to have Annabeth link the Greeks and Norse, as opposed to Percy, or another mortal? Interesting. I don't think anybody's ever asked that before. I don't know. It just seemed like Magnus would be a good cousin for Annabeth to have. I could see them getting along, their personalities. And it turned out, I think that ended it pretty well. Will there be more books in the Magnus Chase series? Yes. Is that something you'd like to see? Well, the Magnus Chase series series, I crafted it as a trilogy, so The Ship of the Dead does wrap up that story arc. That's not to say that I could never go back to Magnus's world. I mean, certainly there's a lot of other stories I could tell. Really, it's just basically a question of what do I want to spend the time writing the most, and what do I think you guys want to read the most? And so if every book takes me 6 months to a year to write, you know, that's a big commitment. I got to make sure that I'm doing the right thing first, and I've only got so much time, right? So I've got to figure out, okay, do I want to do this or that, or another thing? So I don't know. I'd love to do that. We will see. All right, Sam would like to say, I am a writer myself. Awesome. How do you finish one story idea? Without getting sidetracked by other ideas. I am really glad you asked that question, because sometimes I forget to talk about that when I give people writing advice. I have an entire binder this full of half-finished stories from when I was in high school and college. Does anybody have any half-finished stories lying around? Yeah, I'm not surprised. You know what I found out? Everybody has that problem. Everybody. Every writer you know has had that problem. Here's what happens. You get to the middle of the story. Number one thing, you probably didn't plan it out. Like you didn't make an outline before you started. I know I didn't. And so you get to the middle and you have no idea where to go. If you write an outline first, even if it's really, really rough, and then you just follow it, that helps a lot. Second thing, you get to the middle of the story and you say, oh, this is hard. I think I'll try another one and that'll be easier. It's not going to be any easier. You're just going to get another half-finished story. What you have to do is force yourself to finish the story even though you think it's garbage. And first drafts are always garbage. I have written 30 novels. My first drafts are still always garbage. But I make myself finish it anyway, and then I go back to the very beginning and I know a little bit better about where the story's going and how to fix it. So that's my advice to you. What inspired Leo Valdez? I think he's loosely based on several different students I had in the past. When I was a teacher in Texas, and Leo's from Texas, I knew a lot of kids like Leo Valdez. And so I don't know. I don't know if there was one person, though, that inspired me. Sam, age 11. If you were stranded on an island, oh dear, what 3 books would you bring? Wow. And I can't bring, like, the Kindle app, huh? It's really small. I don't know, I would probably bring the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Just because that really is, you know, so close to my heart. It's what got me into all of the great fantasy and mythology. What's your favorite kind of music? Do you play any instruments? Yes, I like all kinds of music. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm writing, it has to be instrumental. I can't have words. So I'll listen to like classical or jazz. If I'm just listening for fun, it could be anything from folk to rock to anything, really. I like all kinds of music. And yes, I do play the guitar. There was a time in college where that was my job. I thought I was going to be a rock star. And we had a band. Fortunately for the world, I didn't go into that career. What was your inspiration for unique weapons like Jack and Riptide? When I was in elementary school, like Percy, I got easily bored. And so I would sit there in class while the teacher was lecturing, and I would play with my fountain pen, and I would imagine that I could uncap it and turn it into a sword. And that's where the idea for Riptide came. I always thought I could just leap onto my desk in second period and go, ha-ha! Have you ever been surprised by one of my characters, liking or disliking them more than you thought you would? Yeah, Apollo. I dislike him and like him more than I thought I would. He's a real weird character to write about, but he's kind of fun. I like that. Why haven't, and a similar question, well, sort of similar. Why haven't you had a character for a main character in a book? Can you write a book with a girl main character? Great question. Now, I have to qualify that. The Kane Chronicles were 50-50, Carter and Sadie. They both got equal billing. So they were, I would consider Sadie pretty much a main character. The Heroes of Olympus also, you had 7 narrators. 3 of them were girls. But I get your point. Yes, I haven't done that yet, and that is another thing that would be great to do. What that would look like, what the book would be, I'm not sure. It could be a new series. I've thought, for instance, about doing maybe standalone novels set in Percy's world, where you could have like one novel that was just Thalia Grace's story. So it sounds like you like that idea. All right. Do you enjoy making us suffer with your cliffhangers? Well, I'll tell you next time I'm in town. Okay. And will there be more Percy Jackson books? If so, will they be ... second generation? I'm not sure. Could. I still have about 2 years that I have to spend writing the other Apollo books. So you're talking 3 years down the road before any of these ideas would be coming out, but they are all fantastic ones, and I am taking notes. Dylan would like to know, for your last book, my last book, I'm dying now, I'm going to write my last book. No, I get what you mean. Would you ever do a giant crossover with everybody? Sort of an Avengers-style mashup, right? Norse and Greeks, and then the Egyptians come in, and everybody's fighting and blowing stuff up. I like the idea. The question I would have is, could I do that and give everybody equal billing? And that's really hard. I have a lot of respect for things like the Avengers that get it right, that have like 15 main characters. That's hard. When I wrote The Heroes of Olympus, and I thought 7 main characters sounded good at the time, afterwards I was like, what was I thinking? 7 main characters? It's crazy. So I'm not sure. And final question, which is also a fantastic question. What can a person do to become a better writer? Tips, habits, schedules. Okay, if you want the real nitty-gritty, the really detailed answers, just go to my website, which is rickriordan.com, and I've got an entire section on there called Advice for Aspiring Writers. You can find out how to do dialogue, how to do action scenes, how to deal with writer's block, how to find an agent. It's all there. If you want the short answer, 3 things to be a writer. They sound easy, but they're very hard. Number 1, read a lot. I have a feeling a lot of you already have that one covered. That's great. You have to read widely, because that's where you find out what kind of stories work for you. What kind of characters do you like? How do you like the dialogue to sound? What kind of descriptions work for you as a reader? And you can sort of figure out where you want to go from there. Second thing, write a lot. Now, writing is not easy. It never gets easy. Even after 30 books, it's still really hard. But you can get better at it if you practice. It's like a sport. If you don't build up your writing muscles, you're not going to improve. So write a little bit every day. Diaries, poems, short stories, doesn't matter. Just write something, and you will get better. And as I said before, finish what you start. Even if you think it's horrible, doesn't matter, finish it. Third thing, most important of all, don't give up. My first book, Big Red Tequila, I sent it out to 14 publishers, every major publisher in New York. 13 said no. The 14th said yes. If I'd given up after 3 no's, or 5 no's, or 10 no's, I wouldn't be standing up here. So, believe in yourself. Don't give up. Keep trying. Thank you guys so much. You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you.
Here is a signed book from Uncle Rick. Copies are available in the back. T-shirts, pens. I also want to thank the Monroe County Library System, as well as the Friends and Foundation of Rochester Public County. night, Rochester.